Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this chat, I'd like to talk about how laws all across the Western world to do with a health emergency, a recent health emergency, and I'm choosing my words carefully there, but also in regard to mass immigration and all manner of things that you could sort of put in the pro-globalisation stable. All of these are being passed in parliaments and legislatures and lawmaker chambers. They're going through on a nod. They're going through without debate, without a full parliamentary vote, and they're just being rammed through effectively by the executive or a small quorum of legislators that are hand-picked because they'll just nod it through the parliament. So let's just go back to when this so-called health emergency began. Now, all the dire warnings were based on computer modelling. Nobody knew, there was no evidence to support that there was going to be anything resembling an epidemic or a pandemic. But the computer modelling was suggesting that it was going to be close to an apocalypse, which I'm not sure anyone actually believed that, but nonetheless. Now, the bodies politic all across the Western world, with very rare exception, voted for emergency powers to be given to the executive. So just to understand this, once a parliament votes emergency powers to the executive, the individual parliamentarians temporarily give up their right to vote on item by item legislation. They give emergency powers to the executive, and the executive can act supposedly in the public interest, but if they're controlled by the globalists, of course, they'll act in the globalist interest, which is exactly what happened when emergency laws were developed. And throughout history, by the way, there's, even in the Roman Republic of more than 2,000 years ago, in the event of an emergency, such as an invasion or something like that, the Senate could vote what were called the consuls, and there were two consuls, could vote the consuls' dictatorial powers for 6 months. And then the consul could do things like raise armies or raise taxes to prevent the invasion. So throughout history, these provisions have more or less, been in place. So, but now we're far more sophisticated in determining what is an emergency, and our massed influx of illegal immigrants in emergency. Well, apparently not. That's fine. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But this alleged health emergency, that was where we didn't know what was going to happen. The first 6 months, you could say, was maybe justified. If I was a parliamentarian voting, I would have said, no, look, let's assess the danger that we're facing here. So you can have 2 months. So let's assess that danger. And if there is indeed a danger and it's looking like it, and we've got the numbers to back it up, then we can vote you some more time. Otherwise, let's assess where it's going. But instead of that, the computer modelling, which was wildly exaggerated beyond belief, 100-fold, 1,000-fold in some cases, more than the actual numbers. The emergency powers were given for 6 months, and then they've been renewed again and again and again. And I've noticed this recently, looking at some parliaments around the world, the British Parliament among them, the renewal of the emergency powers just went through in a nod. There was no debate, there was no committee review, there was no full assembly of the House where points could be debated. And when the vote was held, and hand-picked flunkies came along to the Parliament, the once mighty Parliament at Westminster, it's now just a piss-poor little rubber stamp for the globalists. They all vote. I think it was one dissenting vote. They all voted for the extension of the emergency powers, even though, just as a direct consequence of this alleged pandemic. There's hardly anyone dying as a direct result of it. It's not worthy. It wasn't back then, and certainly isn't now. It wasn't even remotely worthy of emergency powers. It fails, in my view, it fails to meet any criteria that is described in the Emergency Powers Act, other than they can invent it. Say, we say 10 trillion people are going to die every nanosecond. We can say that, and that then justify. No. That doesn't justify it. You have to prove or show there is an imminent danger, and given there's over 18 months of data now, then there's not even the slightest need for emergency powers. Not the slightest, but yet that Parliament voted through. In fact, the idea there was even one dissenting vote was a matter of some mirth. It was something justifying ridicule that anybody would vote against it. So this has been happening everywhere, Australia too, the state of Victoria and so on. And just in the build up to when a vote on extension of emergency powers is about to take place, all sorts of horror stories appear in the media, which again is globalist controlled and totally on board with these lockdowns and so on. But this is how it's done now. Now, bit by bit, the public is being conditioned into accepting lockdowns and masks and the idea that the goalposts can be shifted arbitrarily at any time. Well, we say it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Now, then it's 6 months, then it's 12 months, 18 months, then it's 2 years. Now we're looking at a possibility of 3 years, yet without a requirement. Other than the horror stories and the wild predictive modelling, which has never come even remotely true. Other than that, there is no pandemic. Not even it doesn't meet even a minimum threshold for a pandemic. It didn't at the beginning and doesn't now. But this is the general tactic that's being used, and it's used with some effect. They couldn't do it without the media being completely on side. That's a very critical part of it. Again, they've got 90% plus of the media on side, all banging on about what a danger it is. The new variants. What happens if a new variant comes? We have to have emergency powers. We have to keep a lockdown in case a new variant. But we also have to lock down in case the Martians come. What if the Martians land a spaceship on? What about that? We have to have the lockdown for that. But what about if this? What about if so and so? You can invent stories forever and say that that's the basis for emergency powers, but that's crap. So the emergency powers have to be stopped. Parliamentarians have to find a backbone and a spine, and they say, no, this is the people's house. The people decide this. Now, if you want to have continued lockdowns, we'll have a referendum, and the people can decide if there's going to be continued lockdowns. Otherwise, no lockdowns, no emergency powers, and you justify it to the people. You don't impose it, you justify it, you reason with them, and then you ask them for their permission to do it. You serve the people, not the other way around. And this is the way I think it needs to go, because they can invent these stories forever. Well, the new variants coming, the health officials have said, well, we believe in the science. We believe in the experts have said so. What a load of bullshit. So we've got to push back against this and say, fine, if you want to do that, you have a referendum and the people will decide, which in a functioning democracy is how it should be. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.